Jesse Kerr says, you have freckles. Don't hide them. Sport them. Amy says, I love your nose. Today, we're going to be answering questions from all across my social media platforms. If you're new here, my name's Heather Blankenship, and I've been investing in real estate for over a decade. If you have a question you want answered, make sure you put it in the comments, and I'll get to it on the next episode. The first question is, I have found property. I want to do my first letter of intent. Can you give some advice, please? So to start with, a letter of intent is something, it's called an LOI. It's something that you traditionally use in commercial real estate. It's not really something that's typically used in residential. Different asset classes have different kind of standards that are usually included in a letter of intent. If you took some kind of mastermind or went through some kind of course, sometimes they'll give you a sample of this. My RV park students all get samples of the letters of intents that I use. My beginner students get samples of those letters of intent also. I would highly encourage you to find somebody, whether you find them at a meetup or a mastermind or something that has written a letter of intent before. Use that as your guide. It'll show you some different things to include, like length of due diligence period and the link to close and, your earnest money, as well as a few expectations that you might have written out. It's a little different than writing an offer in a residential situation. So I highly encourage you to find a sample that somebody will let you have or from a group that you're in so that you can go off of that. Joey's asking, how do you decide if it's better to do seller financing versus using bank financing? Or is that always the better option? It's gonna be the same answer for a lot of these questions. You really need to run your numbers and see what works better for you. Sometimes people use seller financing options because the deal isn't financeable, meaning they don't have really great documents or they don't have great numbers, or it's a weird asset class that they're having trouble finding a lender for. Sometimes seller financing has more creative options, meaning maybe the interest rate's better, maybe the down payment's better, or you don't have to go through this long, lengthy process with a bunch of information. But sometimes it's better to get bank financing, especially back a couple months ago when we had really great interest rate options and it was a little bit easier to get deals financed. So my answer to that is always run your numbers and weigh your options on what it's going to take. China Has My Data Now asks, don't you have a lot of problems with lack of payments? They made this comment on a mobile home park post, and in reality, I don't have any more trouble with payments in a mobile home park than I do in any other asset class that I own. I own RV parks, mobile home parks, Section 8 multifamily, glamping resorts. I bought my first motel, and I'll tell you that the mobile home parks are the ones that are truly mailbox money. It's really great because oftentimes they own the home that's on the lot. And as the owner of a mobile home park, maybe you only own the lot. Some of them own the lot and the home, but it's not uncommon to only own the lot. And because they're more invested, because they've got their own home there, they're likely to pay that lot rent, because eviction means that they have to move their mobile home, which is thousands of dollars. And the last quote that I got to move a mobile home was $7,000. That's going to vary depending on how far you're taking it and the breakdown and stuff like that. But my point is, it's not cheap. So we don't have a big issue with non-payment on mobile homes. Texas 8 Cabins Airbnb Tiny says, I'm scared to try the Section 8. I'm scared that they will tear them up. So I own quite a bit of Section 8 units. If you don't know what that is, it's affordable housing. They get a voucher from the government based on their income. The government directs deposits a portion of their rent into your account on the first of every month. And then typically the tenant has a small portion that they also pay themselves. Sometimes there's tenants that have 100% through the government. Sometimes it's a small portion. I own other types of long-term investments, and my affordable housing people are not any more rough on my properties than the luxury properties that I have. I think the reason is in the county I'm in, those people have been on a 2-year wait list in order to find somewhere to live. And that means they've been waiting 2 years to get this opportunity. Some of them have been living at other people's houses. I know people who were living on a couch inside of a church. A couple of them were homeless previously. So they are really, really, really grateful to finally have somewhere for their family to live, and they don't want to lose that opportunity. And I will tell you, when I first started out, I made a huge mistake. And that huge mistake was I did not screen my Section 8 tenants the same as I do my regular tenants. For some reason, I had it in my head that, the government's paying their rent, and we verified that they're employed, so, I don't really need to screen them. And that was a huge mistake that I quickly learned and changed. I screen my Section 8 tenants the same as I do my other affordable housing tenants. They need to make 3 times the rent, meaning 3 times whatever it is they're paying. They can't have had any evictions on their record for a certain amount of time. We need to verify that employment, and not just by looking at their paycheck stub. We call their employer and verify that employment. And then I also have a set standards for criminal history. And so verifying those tenants is going to make a huge difference in how your property is taken care of. I'm all in favor of Section 8. This question is from Nathan Waters, and it's related to an RV park post. He says, what's the minimum acreage you'd recommend? I have 16 acres acres wooded 10 miles from Lake Michigan. There isn't necessarily a minimum acreage. It all depends on what your goals are and what type of park you're trying to build. I'll tell you that the standard is that you can have 10 sites per acre. Now, you might have more, you might have less, depending on the situation or what planning and zoning allows in your area. But if you think of it as you can get 10 sites per acre, you could almost have a 160-acre park there. You might have a few exceptions. For example, if you're going to have a septic system, or depending on what your waste system is, you might have to have some land set aside for that type of thing. Maybe there's a wetland included in there that you can't technically build on or whatever. So you need to know how many of those acres are usable. You also need to know what your plan is. Are you going to be a long-term park? Are you going to be a short-term park? Is your goal just to create a job for yourself, or do you want to be able to have managers in place there so that it's more of a passive income, or maybe you're working a different job and wanted to keep that going? So if you wanted to be able to hire out some of those positions, you need to have enough sites in order to bring in enough money to be able to afford to hire help, whether it's housekeeping, maintenance, grounds, or a manager at the property. If you only put 16 sites in and it were going to be a short-term park, you'd probably be managing it yourself because you wouldn't be able to afford people to work there. So you got to think that through when you're running your numbers. Your mom is asking a question related to glamping resorts, and she says, how are you able to get permits for glamp sites? Airbnb won't allow you to permit campsites. So Airbnb does let you use glamping sites, which is different than a campsite. Glamping is glamorous camping, which means the structure is already set up for them. There's going to be some really great bedding inside and most of the things that they might find inside of a hotel room, so that they can come in and post their really cute picture on Instagram like they've gone camping, but they were actually glamping. So she's saying that they won't allow campsites on Airbnb, which means all you've got is maybe a picnic table and potentially some electric and water hookups or something like that, and the person has brought their own tent. And that's right, Airbnb doesn't have campsites like that, but they do have glamping sites. So if you're trying to get permitted for that, there's a couple things that you need to do. First, you're going to call your city planning and zoning office and talk to them about what your options are in that area, because not every area is going to allow it, and different areas are going to have different guidelines. Also, different zoning is going to have different options for you. Maybe you could get it rezoned, maybe you can't. So you really need to call and talk to them and find out what your options are. The second thing that's really important is making sure that you have all of your utilities in place already, or that you have an option to get utilities there. There's some really beautiful pieces of land that you can't get utilities to. So depending on what your business plan is with glamping, you may need sewer, probably. You're definitely going to need water, and you potentially need electricity, depending on what you're planning on putting in. So figuring out that planning and zoning and figuring out your utilities are the first two things you're looking for with your glamp site. The Dark Potato says that daddy's money got you all these companies. Y'all would not believe how much hate I get on all of these sites. And there's definitely no daddy's money going on here. My mom actually works for me, and there's no man that gave me any money. DIY Landlord's asking, what would you say are your key team members? I have a lot of key team members, and you'll often hear me talking about we do this or we do that. And in reality, I don't have any partners in the real estate that I own. But what I do have are really great employees, and some of them have been there with me from the beginning, and I think of them like family. I've got my property managers, and some of them have been with me for about 8 years. I have a really fabulous maintenance manager, and he's been around for about the same amount of time. My housekeepers are great. My mother is my COO, and she is a task master. I couldn't do it without her. Having a really great assistant is one of the first people that you need to hire, even if that's a virtual assistant, or maybe somebody who runs errands and helps with some of the things that give you your time back. I also hired an intern a couple years ago who freaking killed it, and when he graduated, he took over as my property manager. So there are a ton of key team members. It just depends on what you're trying to accomplish and what your weak points are. The next question is just getting into multifamily real estate 2 weeks ago. Any tips? My tip is going to be screen every tenant. Multifamily can be really great passive income, but if you don't screen all your tenants, one troubled tenant could make 100 units miserable. So make sure that you have guidelines that you follow every single time, and you treat every single application the same, because it is illegal not to treat them the same. So screen every single tenant. I did a video based on one of my Section 8 properties, and somebody commented saying Section 8 participants have no money. You'll never collect the damages. What they're referring to is they're saying that they damage all the properties, and then if something goes wrong, you'll never collect the money. Here's the thing. That's probably true that they don't have money to fix whatever the damages are. But here's the thing. Lots of areas have nonprofit organizations that if you can do really great documentation, you take before pictures, after pictures, you have the tenant sign them, and you can prove that they damaged the property, which you can because there's inspections done through Section 8 every couple of years. Different counties are different on how often those are. My county's every other year. When I can prove that they did the damage, there are local organizations that will give me up to $5,000 to go towards that damage in order to remodel that property and get another Section 8 tenant in it. Very rarely, if ever, do I have more than $5,000 worth of damage across the 300 units that I have. Here for a good time asks, does the price of fuel going up concern you with your RV properties? You know, I've owned my original RV park for 11 years now, and fuel prices have been all over the place across those 11 years. And I'd be lying if I say it wasn't something that I had thought about. But I'll tell you, I've been watching my data each day. I get KPIs each day from each office that I have, and they're telling me different things like how much money we took in today compared to the last 3 years on the same day, what different employees did, different type of metrics. And I've been watching to see if the gas prices have affected it, and it really hasn't changed. I keep thinking that it might, and I keep watching closely to see if it does. But as of right now, which is July 13th, we haven't seen much of a change. Joey D. Fritz commented on a glamping video that one of these canvas tent setups can easily be as expensive as an RV. And he's not wrong. There's some really great glamping accommodations that have kitchens and bathrooms and all kinds of really great space that are tree houses and tents and yurts and remodeled train cars and really cool Airstreams that can cost $50,000. But what I will tell you is that people are looking for this unique experience. I stayed in a tree house last year when I was doing some research for one of my properties, and I stayed in one of the popular chains that have glamping tents, and they're one of the few places that are in quite a few locations. I spent almost $500 for one night in their glamping tent because it was such a great experience, and it was packed. Like, you couldn't get a reservation for months. And same with the treehouse. And I do rent RVs also. I don't want to hate on that because my RV rentals do really well, but they rent for about $150 to $250 a night. And some of those really great glamping accommodations that are costing $50,000 to purchase rent for more like $300, $400, $500 per night. So when you do your numbers, depending on what area you're in, you're going to want to see for the price of what you're paying for it, what works out better, the RV rentals or the glamping rentals. A user with a whole bunch of numbers after it says, how many bedrooms are needed for Section 8? I have 3 one-bedrooms available now. Section 8 has a bunch of different number of bedrooms, and the amount of money that they're willing to pay is based on the zip code and the number of bedrooms. So they will definitely rent 1 bedrooms. I have one apartment complex that has only 1 bedrooms and it stays full with Section 8 tenants and does really well. So I encourage you to go to the website for your county. You can just Google search the Section 8 website for your county, and you'll find a graph that shows you for what zip code, for a number of bedrooms, what they're willing to pay. You'll figure out there, if you run your numbers, if it's worth it for you to put it on the Section 8 program or to rent it outright. Clay Franklin says, wouldn't banks not want to give out loans for mobile homes? I imagine banks will not give loans to a person buying a mobile home. Just asking. I wish I could buy a mobile home park too. You got a couple options there. Mobile homes are sometimes financed by regular banks, but also when you go to a mobile home lot and purchase a mobile home, they usually have some really great financing options for you there. There's even banks specifically for that. I own 4 mobile home parks, and I've had the most success using local banks and credit unions to get those financed, and I haven't had any issues. If you have a question you want me to answer, make sure you put it in the comments. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.